shocking moment of floor collapse at a house party, sending dozens News has just learned that the full U.S. Senate has been invited to meet with him tomorrow via Zoom. Vice President Kamala Harris is also scheduled to travel to the region next week. Let's get right to Richard Engel, who leads us off again tonight.
After President Vladimir Putin apparently misjudged Ukrainian resistance, he appears to be trying to make up for it with brute force, wiping out this neighborhood in Chernihiv. This is what's left of a school that officials in Zhytomyr say was hit by a Russian strike. And NATO now accuses Russia of using cluster bombs, indiscriminate weapons banned by many countries, though not Russia or the United States. Reactors was hit, and that no. Meanwhile, Russian forces are having success in the south. After taking Kherson, now firing on Odessa and surrounding and attacking Mariupol, where the mayor says they're running out of food. Russia's apparent aim to cut off Ukraine from the Black Sea. In the capital, Kiev, there's now an urgent scramble to escape.
As Russian forces are getting closer to the city, people are streaming out of it. Parents are tethered to their children, they're taking their pets, they're taking their grandparents, and everyone is heading west. You're hearing the train announcements and the train whistles and these long lines of people climbing onto the tracks. It feels to me like another era.
The most crazy feel when you hear how kids screaming, mothers screaming. It's so crazy, that panic. You see how people so afraid.
It has been like this all day. There's a lot of confusion about where these trains are departing from. People had been waiting here on platform 9. There was just an announcement a few moments ago that the train to the west is actually leaving from platform 12. Now everyone is rushing there, and nobody wants to miss it. This is the push right up at the door. There's been some people dropping bags. We've seen people holding their babies up in the air as they're trying to cram as many people possible onto this train. A lot of families we spoke to said they decided this morning to pack up their house, come here to the station, and just head west.
Oksana is taking her 1-year-old. They're leaving her husband behind with no idea where they'll eventually end up. We're at war, she says. We have to get the children out. Oleksiy, staying behind to fight, told us saying goodbye to his wife and son is the hardest moment of his life.
Tom, Ukraine's President Zelensky today again called for a no-fly zone. He's been critical of the West for not doing more, but NATO ruled it out, just like the White House has done before. Tom?
Richard Engel for us tonight. Richard, thank you. For a more in-depth look at Russia seizing control of Europe's largest nuclear power plant, I want to bring in a senior fellow at the Council of Strategic Risks, Andrew Weber. He's also a former Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Defense. Andrew, thanks for joining Top Story tonight. A lot of people at home are going to be maybe a little afraid about this because it seems like such a major development in this war. The Russians now have control of Europe's largest nuclear power plant. What exactly does that mean for Europe and the rest of the world? And how bad could this be if the Russians don't know what they're doing?
Well, it's a reckless attack, and it could be bad. Luckily, it doesn't seem that any of the reactors or the cooling systems were hit in the shelling and fire from last firefight. And it's unclear over, but they must be relying on the Ukrainian reactor staff, who are in a terrible, terrible situation. I mean, they're almost in a hostage situation, but I'm sure they will, given the chance, if given the chance, they will act responsibly and make sure that the safety of the reactor is maintained.
Is this a strategic play? I mean, what would happen if they would shut this down? Is that something they would do?
Well, These 6 reactors supply about 25% of Ukraine's electricity. So I do think it was a well-planned strategic attack by the Russian military, although I don't think they thought it through very far. It's not clear, will they completely shut it down to deny Ukraine a major source of electricity? But you don't just shut off a nuclear plant just like a light bulb. It takes at least a week to do it safely, and you have to maintain the flow of the coolant. And if you lose power, and that's what caused the Fukushima disaster, was when they lost power to the cooling systems. They do have backup generators that are
It would almost be more dangerous to turn it off. It would almost be more dangerous to turn it off than to keep it running. Finally, you don't have to be a nuclear physicist to understand why this was such a big deal, you know, combat happening outside of a nuclear power plant. How bad could this have been?
Well, it's absolutely reckless, and it could have been very bad. And of course, the prevailing winds go towards Russia, had there been some type of a meltdown and large radiation release. And this hasn't happened, but there are other nuclear reactors around Ukraine, not all of them as safe as this one. So it was a reckless, really incredible act of war.
Andrew Weber for us tonight. Andrew, we thank you for your time here on Top Story. Tonight, we're also following those making it to relative safety, if you can even call it that, in western Ukraine, where we are, and across the border, including an unprecedented number of children. I spoke to several children for a look inside of a shelter housing orphans and how they're fleeing the violence without a family.
Tonight, in the bitter cold, with the snow falling, the Great Escape rolls on. And when Ukrainians reach refugee camps like this one in Romania, the great shock settles in.
When I tell my mom that I will go to save my life, mom was crying and told me that maybe she never see me again. It was most scary words which I heard in my life.
We're now learning an unprecedented 500,000 children have fled Ukraine in just the last week. In refugee camps across Eastern Europe, the adults try to create small moments of normalcy, handing out bubbles and celebrating birthdays.
I hope we will win soon, the war will end and we come home again.
Some have to stay in Ukraine for now. These children are living at a specialized school in Lviv in western Ukraine. There are 80 of them, orphans, who were evacuated from the east when their towns were bombed by the Russians.
Who called you to tell you we have the orphans coming?
Teachers from those regions called me to take these children.
So Lviv did. The children are not only being fed, they're also being taught.
What's it like to know that these orphans had to be taken out of a war zone?
It's something like it's very painful and hard, but we know that children are then neutral, and we try to think positive.
Children like 8-year-old Demetrius.
What do you want the world to know about Ukraine?
Demetrius tells me he wants the war to stop so that he can go back home. He's hoping to be adopted.
Anything you want to say to anybody, any of your friends back in that other region?
Demetrius's answer is soul-crushing.
I want them to stay alive, not to die.
As for the people of Lviv, the ones helping him, he says thank you.
For now, all those orphans are being housed, as you saw there. They're being fed, they're being taken care of. They're also going to school because the staff there wants to make sure things are as normal as can be. I did ask them what happens if the fighting moves west. They said if the children are ever at risk, they will evacuate them. All right, we continue our coverage now here from Ukraine. We want to head inside Russia tonight. A lot of developments there. For their part, Russian President Vladimir Putin are taking harsh new steps to control messaging about this war, including a press crackdown that has prompted some international news organizations to suspend operations. Keir Simmons is in Moscow with that report.
Tonight, President Putin, in another televised message with tensions between Russia and NATO on a knife edge. The Russian leader saying, there are no bad intentions towards our neighbours, and I would advise them not to escalate the situation. Government officials and business leaders appearing by video link. The Russian president now away from the Kremlin, speaking from his residence outside Moscow. Earlier, President Putin held an hour-long call with Germany's chancellor. Germany saying it had urged Russia to end the fighting. But the fighting continues, and tonight, inside Russia, the president signing a new law passed by parliament making it illegal to distribute so-called false information about the military operation. Calling the operation in Ukraine an invasion or a war could be illegal. Breaking the law could result in up to 15 years in prison. Meanwhile today, Facebook was officially blocked by Russia's internet regulator, and Twitter has been restricted, according to state media. And now, more independent news organisations have been taken offline here, including the BBC's Russian service, a state-funded German channel, and Radio Free Europe.
Keir Simmons again for us tonight. Keir, thank you. We turn now to Washington. President Biden under growing pressure as he faces calls from both Democrats and Republicans to ban Russian oil imports. Lawmakers desperately trying to find a way to stop Putin's escalating invasion in Ukraine, while the administration toes the line between supporting the country and avoiding direct participation in the war. Kelly O joins us now from the White House tonight. Kelly, the Biden administration already levying numerous sanctions against Russia, and today continuing those diplomatic talks with the country's neighbors. President Biden speaking with Poland's president and Finland's leaders, but both sides of the aisle saying it's not enough, that the president needs to target those Russian oil sales. Where do things stand tonight?
Well, part of what really stands out is that you have both Democrats and Republicans on the Senate side as well as the House side in great numbers urging the White House to take these steps to ban the importation of Russian petroleum, oil, liquid natural gas, the kind of products that are really the treasure chest for Vladimir Putin, what he can use to finance this war. And what the White House and the administration are saying is they are now looking at different options where they could curtail the import of some products. We don't know exactly how they would do that, but what was noticeable today is that one of the president's top economic advisors said they are considering options to cut off some of the importation of Russian oil products, and that would have potentially a pain for Vladimir Putin, like the other financial kinds of penalties and sanctions we've seen. But what they're trying to avoid is having instability in the global energy market and causing an increase in prices at the pump at a time when many Americans already know it's costing them more to fill up. So they're trying to find that balance. There's a lot of political pressure to do more, and they're trying to find a way to look for some kind of sanction, some kind of ban that would punish Vladimir Putin, but not punish the American driver. Tom?
Kelly, you know, I want to play you something South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham said that has drawn widespread condemnation. Let's take a listen.
The only way this ends, my friend, is for somebody in Russia to take this guy out. You would be doing your country a great service and the world a great service.
Kelly, what was the White House reaction to that?
Well, the White House was asked about this today, and Lindsey Graham was sort of voicing this primal vengeance, this idea of Russians perhaps assassinating their own leader as a way to end this war because of the singular power that Vladimir Putin has. The White House made it clear that is not the policy of the United States. Advocating for an assassination of a head of state is not the U.S. policy, and it is not the policy of the Biden administration to even seek regime change in this war. They are open to diplomacy, working with the Russian government, and so they wanted to tamp that down. Lindsey Graham has a long history with foreign policy and has been a hawk in many ways. But that comment got a lot of people reacting that could be volatile and provocative at a time when they're trying to keep things from getting worse. Tom?
Kelly O'Donnell live for us from the White House tonight. Kelly, we thank you for that. I want to get right to Ambassador Michael McFaul because there's been so many developments. He's an NBC News national security and international affairs analyst and a former U.S. ambassador to Russia under President Obama. Ambassador, you know, we're 1 week into this invasion, and you tweeted last night, quote, "It is not rational to bomb nuclear power plants. It is insane." Do you think there's anyone inside the Kremlin wondering how to talk Putin down?
They're definitely wondering it, Tom. I bet you every single person in the Kremlin is wondering it. But whether they have the courage to do so is a different matter. You know, General Gerasimov, for instance, his top general, his Minister of Defense, Sergei Shoigu, when they received the orders to put on alert, a higher level of alert, nuclear forces, I watched the clip of that. And when they said yes to do that, they used one word to say yes. Neither of them looked enthusiastic to do that. You know, my sense of the debate amongst elites and watching and reading as I do other things inside Russia, as well as the incredibly brave, mostly young Russians that are protesting against Putin on the streets, is that there's nobody that supports this war. Vladimir Putin started it alone. It seems like he's the only one that wants to keep it going. You know, maybe one or two of his old KGB guys, you know, that would support it. But the vast elite, they don't understand what is going on. And as you know what they especially don't understand? They don't understand what is the end game. What is he going to do if he actually gets all the way to Kiev or Kharkiv? And let's say Zelensky has to flee or they capture him. What then? Are they going to occupy the entire country, including where you're at, forever? Russia doesn't have the resources to do that, and the army doesn't have the will to do that, and the Ukrainians have the will to fight that kind of operation forever. And that is a question you hear a lot in my circles in Russia. What is the end game to this crazy war?
I can tell you they definitely have the will here in Ukraine to keep fighting. I want to go to your latest op-ed in the Washington Post because you wrote something that I found really interesting because I've been following some of the tweets you've put out and some of your thinking. Let's put up this quote on the screen right now. You write, "Biden must signal to Putin, again privately, that the United States and the West would be prepared to relax sanctions if Putin withdraws his soldiers from Ukraine. If Putin continues his slaughter of innocent civilians or arrests and kills President Volodymyr Zelensky and his government, this offer ought to be withdrawn. But today, Putin should be offered a way out of the corner in which he has trapped himself." So, Ambassador McFaul, I know your backbone is diplomacy, and you've written this in the Washington Post. So I'm going to think that you do believe this. But I'm surprised. Do you honestly think there is still hope to give Putin an off-ramp?
There's a difference between policy advocacy and then being an analyst, right? If I put on my analyst hat, I think the probability is extremely low. That's what I would say. And I don't know of anybody that watches and thinks about Putin that thinks he wants that. But if I'm a policymaker, and I'm writing that to American policymakers, even if the probability is 2%, you got to do everything you can to make it 2.5%. Because the consequences of this war continuing will mean tens of thousands of people will die, including some of my friends where you are right now, including my friends in Kiev and Kharkiv. So I think you have to you have to put that on the table, make that an option, and put it in front of other Russians to see that maybe think, well, maybe Putin might not do it, but it's time for us to talk to him, or maybe it's time for us to talk on behalf of our country to take this option if he would not.
Finally, Ambassador McFaul, you're somebody a lot of people in the States and across the world are listening to when it comes to this invasion. What has been the single thing that has surprised you the most about the last 7 days?
Well, the obvious thing is the incredible bravery of the Ukrainian people. I'm a teacher at Stanford. We run a big training program of Ukrainians. We've had about 300 through our programs. I hosted President Zelensky here in August. I had him for several hours on our campus. And never in a million years, I thought he was very engaging, smart, but there's lots of policy debates. You know well, it's rough and tumble politics in Ukraine because it's a democracy. And yet I am just incredibly in awe of President Zelensky and what he has done to inspire all kinds of Ukrainians to fight. I also appreciate the heroism of those Russians that are still being arrested, those Russians that are still saying, we don't want this war. Both of those things were surprising to me and give me hope that there may be a way to end this war and maybe a way to push back on the Putin regime.
On that point, before you go, today Russia blocked access to Facebook, Twitter, and passed a law that seems to criminalize the practice of journalism, causing the BBC to shut down operations, CNN as well. Are we entering into a new dangerous phase within Russia itself?
Oh, absolutely. This is shocking. Absolutely shocking. That law, 15 years in jail for talking about the war, shutting down Facebook and Twitter, all other news. By those laws, you have to protect your people. You have to get them out. He also shut down Dozh TV. He also shut down, which is not opposition, but independent television station. He shut down the iconic Echo Moskvy, the radio station that's been around for 20 years, the most trusted source of news for millions of people in Russia. And this is a really dark time. It feels like Putin is moving his country towards a kind of North Korean totalitarian regime. I've never seen anything like it. He promised Russia when he became president in 2000 that he would do what he can to make Russia like the rich Portugal. He said that in 2000. And what he's really doing in the last 10 days is moving Russia towards North Korea.
Another dangerous turn in this war. Ambassador McFaul, we thank you for your time. Get you here on Top Story. I'll be back later in the broadcast with more from Ukraine, including my interview with a member of Ukraine's parliament who is very close to the president here. But for now, we turn to Gabe Gutierrez in New York with more from Top Story.
Tom, thanks so much. Still ahead on this Friday night, fake kidnapping arrest.
And you are listening there to the Ukrainian parliament singing the national anthem together as the Russians continue to lay siege in the capital city of Kyiv. Earlier today, I spoke with one of those members of parliament, Igor Chernov, about what life is like inside the besieged capital, his country's wartime needs from the West, and his thoughts on the incredible courage his people have shown. Igor, describe to me life in Kyiv right now.
Well, situation is quite difficult because around the city we have a lot of Russian troops. However, in Kiev is all under control of Ukrainian army and Ukrainian government. People are ready to fight. The motivation and the national spirit on the highest level, I think. So we will fight for our city, we will fight for our capital and for our country and for our future, actually.
Igor, I know your specialty is in computers and the digital space. What has it been like to take on Russia when it comes to cyber warfare?
Well, they tried in a few days and in the beginning of war, they tried to make a DDoS attack to our financial sector, but we managed with this. They didn't achieve their goals to steal our data or to broke our websites. So right now we are quite good in protection of our websites and our digital infrastructure.
What does Ukraine need most from the world right now?
As you maybe know, the problem number one is missile attacks and bombing from the Russian side, because this is the most dangerous and destroyed weapon that they have. They use it against not only Ukrainian army, but also against civilians. So we need your support how to counter-attack of this, how to shoot these missiles. And we ask to establish the no-fly zone over Ukraine. And yeah, I know that NATO countries don't want to do this because they consider it like clashes between US pilots and Russian Federation pilots. But okay, we can do this by our own aircrafts. I mean, we can fight against aircrafts of Russian Federation. We have pilots, but we need more fighter aircrafts. We need your support how to reflect or shoot these missiles.
Igor, I know you're very close to President Zelensky. What can you tell us about the man who is now leading your country during this war?
Well, President Zelensky, I think he became a true leader of nation. He has a support of more than 90% of our nation. This is an example for us how to be brave, for our army, for our nation, for our territorial defense units, and I think not only for Ukrainians, but to the whole world.
Igor Chernov from Ukraine's parliament joining us tonight here on Top Story. Igor, we thank you for your time. Please stay safe. Coming up, the images from this week leaving a mark on the world. The families forced to separate in Ukraine, but the acts of kindness, big and small, that we saw that brought some light to this darkness. Stay with us.
The fire has grown leaps and bounds. What you see behind me is typical. How you doing?
Pretty bad.
Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers.
2022 is off to a busy start.
Winter's wrath causing headaches from coast to coast.
It's been really incredible to see how quickly volunteers started to help with the cleanup efforts.
Morning News Now, streaming weekdays at 7.
What happened here is a story of loss and salvation. There were residents who hung on for dear life. This is where you took shelter, in this closet.
I took shelter right in this closet right here.
Rioters banged down one of the doors.
Have you found a way to reconcile it a year later?
It really hurt to see this place that I love so much.
Top Story is back live from Ukraine. These stunning scenes playing out across Europe. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky addressing massive crowds via live stream in the Czech Republic, France, Germany, and Georgia. Zelensky urging all Europeans to not remain silent, to not turn a blind eye. So many on the continent rallying behind the people of Ukraine, from big demonstrations to small acts of kindness. Strangers in Germany and Poland opening their doors and their hearts to refugees. Others offering just a hug or a song. NBC's Cal Perry is here in Lviv tonight with more on the growing outpouring of support.
They're the kinds of images that will stick with the world long after this war is over. Young children and their families packing trains desperate to escape the violence, their hands pressed to the glass for a final goodbye, leaving behind husbands, sons, and brothers staying to fight for Ukraine. Many scrambling to get on trains out of Kyiv, others like Elena leaving by car.
We heard all the shootings. We saw the fireworks. I don't know how to call them. And so for 48 hours,